Hello, Lindsay.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Well, thank you for joining us. We're really excited here at DSA to be able to welcome you to our readers and our members, just so they can learn a little bit more about yourself. If you don't mind, just introduce yourself for us, Benjamin.
Fantastic. My name is Benjamin Johnston. Most people call me Ben, and I am based here in Houston, Texas. I have an architecture and interiors firm. We work on properties all around the globe, and it's really fun for me to be able to bring what we call our classic curated cool style to clients across the globe. So really excited to talk about that. And we have a book coming out called Refined Interiors, Timeless Homes for Modern Living. And I'm super excited to be able to share a little bit about that journey.
If you don't mind just sharing, let everybody know why the Houston area. Not sure if you're from that area or if something
Yeah.
or someone or work brought you.
I am actually one of the rare sixth generation Houstonians that you'll ever meet. Our family came here in the 1840s on a covered wagon and settled in the Fort Bend area. And part of our family has been here ever since.
Awesome. And then tell us a little bit about why architecture and design. Was that something that maybe inspired you as a young person, or did you discover it maybe later when you were attending college and trying to figure out what you wanted to do?
No, that's a great question. So, I mean, I think for me, so much of my creative path really, was I was encouraged from my mom really to, I was very interested in drawing and the visual arts. And growing up in Houston, Texas, I think when you think about a career in the creative arts, there's only a few, especially in the 1980s, there was only a few different paths that would even occur to somebody like myself. And so I actually, got my first degree in architecture, bachelor's degree in architecture from Texas A&M University. And then I really enjoyed that entire experience. And so I went on to get my graduate studies at University of Texas. So I got my master's there. And then I actually went and worked for what we used to call a starchitect. I worked for Cesar Pelli, who was a famous Argentinian American architect, and I worked for in his satellite office in Tokyo. So I actually worked in commercial architecture prior to coming back to the United States and putting out my shingle as a designer and kind of organically grew into what we have today, which is a full service architecture and interiors company. And we, as I said, do ground up construction, significant remodels for properties around the world.
So remind us about how long you've had the firm. I didn't know when you maybe had launched it
Yeah, no, I've actually been in this industry and working for myself since, basically 21 years now. So it's been a long process. And again, I didn't necessarily set out to do what it is that we do today, which is primarily focusing on luxury residential properties. I really, when I first put out my shingle, I was doing everything from, small furniture commissions to small interior design, projects, doing kitchen remodels and bathroom remodels. And then I cut my teeth also on projects that got bigger and bigger in scale as I, was able to gain confidence and hone my skills. And I felt more confident to, again, go after larger projects. And then just through referral by happy clients, I got more and more work. So it was a really organic experience. But yeah, 21 years.
That's awesome. Now, you mentioned in your introduction that you just released a book, so we'd really like to kind of dive deep into that and learn a little bit more about that.
Sure.
So this is your debut to book, so congratulations. That's pretty
Thank you.
awesome.
Thank
What
you.
was maybe the most rewarding or even most challenging piece of translating your design work into a published collection?
Oh, well, that's a great question. I would say, when you're looking at doing a design book, it's really, for me, it was like, if I was to use a metaphor, it'd be like an epilogue to a series of stories. And, some of those stories were 5 years in the making. So it was really fascinating for me to be able to take what had existed kind of in four dimensions and really compress it down into two. And photographing your work, as many designers who might be listening to this and have gone through that experience, it's its own creative process, and it really allows for more storytelling through the actual images. And I think that, for me, I think the chance to not only capture and record, but then story tell through the photography was one of the most rewarding aspects. And I also think it was fun in the writing of the book to also put into words what hadn't really existed, maybe in conversation or in thought or in process in our office, and then to be able to try to crystallize and articulate what it is that we did was a really worthwhile experience. And then what I also super excited is, I thrive, our entire business, our entire industry thrives off of collaboration. And I'm really excited to be able to have this book that is really a reflection of all the incredible contractors and artisans and craftsmen and vendors that we had to work with throughout this process, and we had the privilege to work with, and be able to have something tangible to really show for all that wonderful experience and collaboration together.
Awesome. Now, your book showcases 8 residences, many of
Yeah.
which are being revealed for the first time. So, how did you select which homes you'd like to feature and create that story? And what story, excuse me, did you want them to tell collectively?
Yeah, that's a great story and great question. I would say for me, all the projects were chosen obviously for intention, with intention. And the notion was to be able to demonstrate kind of what our bread and butter is. We do, full architecture and interiors, and then sometimes we are hired to just do the interiors. So we also get to collaborate with some fabulous architects as well. And so we wanted to be able to have a book that really showcased that range of not only interior collaboration, but exterior collaboration. So I was really excited to be able to do that. And then, we chose projects that we felt demonstrated kind of philosophical points in our design kind of thought process. So, projects that demonstrated the use of excellent architecture, scale, color, texture. We also wanted to be able to speak to the notions and my stance on theatricality in design, as well as notions of imperfection, and how we use art as inspiration in our interiors. So the projects really reflect a lot of different aesthetics, and we really wanted to be able to communicate how we approach design.
Now, the title of your book emphasizes timeliness. In a world where trends move so quickly, I don't think we
Mhm.
even have a chance to breathe between some of them. What does timeless design mean to you, and how can homeowners achieve that?
Well, first and foremost, I think timelessness for me is really about defying a single stylistic approach to design. It's about making choices that support the project's overall story, as well as it's told with authenticity, as well as a commitment to reflecting our clients and their stories. I think when I talk about timelessness, it's about really making sure that we're not doing, what is expected, what might be trendy, and it brings it into into a realm that really defies categorization. I think that the overall, uh, you know, communicated message that I wanted to be able to reinforce is what we use actually as our design North Star in our office. We always say that projects have to remain classic. They have to feel curated, and they have to have that cool factor that makes you feel like it has a personality, and as I said, reflects our clients that we're commissioned to do this design work for.
Wonderful. Now, balance and proportion are at the heart of your work. How do you translate those classical architectural principles into spaces that still feel fresh, modern, and livable today?
Great question. Again, so I would say for me, balance and proportion, again, are two classical principles that we learn in school. There are a lot of rules that kind of have been developed over many years to define what you should do in design. But for me, I often think you're going to have to know the rules to be able to break the rules. And when you break the rules with intention, you can create spaces that are exciting and dynamic and memorable. A great example of that is I know there's rules about how large your chandelier can be over your dining table, and there's a size for, how it scales in a room and its proportion as it relates to the width and the height and the depth of your room. For me, I think when you adhere to those rules, you're sometimes missing an opportunity to tell a really unique and special story, and to create a wow factor that people are going to remember after they have been able to enjoy one of your spaces.
Now, your book is as much about philosophy as it is about portfolio. What do you hope your readers, both design enthusiasts and professionals, take away from your reflections that you've been able to share?
That's an interesting question, because I think for me, obviously we wanted to do a book that was an authentic reflection of the kinds of projects that we do, and I hope, because we're in our office, we're always stretching and challenging ourselves, doing things that we haven't done before or thinking outside the box. And so I hope that, if somebody was looking through this book and enjoying what they're seeing, hopefully it inspires them to take some risks themselves, to challenge themselves in ways they've never been challenged. I know that like many of the people who might be listening to this podcast, pore over design books, and I love to see what designers did and how they challenged themselves. And so for me, I would just hope for the same for this experience of seeing our book and reading our book.
Now, you answered a little bit of this whenever I first we started, but you've worn many creative hats: designer, artist, teacher, and tastemaker. When did you first realize that design would be your life's work, and how has that vision maybe evolved since that time?
Yeah, I did talk a little bit about this, because I think for me, I think being a creative is something that many people, I think, feel at a very early age. And it was something, as I said, my mom really encouraged me to do. It was really through that process of just saying yes to the opportunities that felt right and the experiences that felt right, and no to the ones that didn't, that really led me to having the company that I have now. Today we employ 22 people from all different walks of life and different countries. And it has allowed us to do what I have decided is kind of our mission. And it was my personal mission, but it's to create beauty in this world, spread positivity through our interactions and our collaborations, and then allow and give the opportunity for other people, collaborators, artisans, craftsmen, clients, to also create beauty in this world. And so for me, I really, really love that. As a career path, I've gone from, again, a young man who is interested in the visual arts, to having this career as a business person, where I get to nurture not only my own mission, but mission for other people.
Now, you mentioned your mom. Just curious if she's a creative herself. I wasn't sure what maybe her background might be. Um, just
Yeah, no, yeah, my mom was a force. She was hyper intelligent, and she would herself say she was not creative. But my mom could pretty much make anything that she wanted to make, and she loved, crafts, and she loved art, and she would take me to the Museum of Fine Arts, almost every day during the summer, so that so we could explore together, not only the visual arts, but the decorative arts as well. And that was a formative experience. And again, she was an amazing woman in terms of just encouraging, creativity. And she was also the one that taught me, I think, one of my life lessons, which was, if opportunity doesn't knock, you have to build a door. And that is, a famous quote. You probably heard it. I think it was originally coined by Milton Berle. And I just love the notion that, everybody is finding an opportunity to be creative and creating opportunity for that. And I think a lot of times designers are potentially waiting for opportunity to happen. And I really have seen it as, thanks to my mom, as being the thing that I could create.
Mhm. That's pretty awesome. Now, just another question, sorry, but do you have a chance to kind of share that story with maybe young or aspiring designers or architects who
Yeah.
may just be a little bit hesitant and maybe waiting, but you're like, no, just you've got to take that on your own. What's kind of maybe your message to those aspiring designers and
Well,
architects?
it's exactly that. And I do find as many opportunities as I can to do that. I actually taught for 6 years at the college level. I taught interior design, and I had 6 years of classes that I was, classes of students, I should say, that I was able to communicate that message to. And then, today I obviously participate in a lot of different, organizations, and I'm a member of the DLN. I'm also a member of the Diversity Advocacy Alliance, which is an incredible organization through the High Point Market Authority. And I'm actually the chair this year for this really incredible organization. But really, what it comes down to is through opportunities for connection, through mentoring, through discussions. I do a lot of panel speaking, and I've done a lot of podcasts. So I'm excited to be able to share that. And even in the book, I talk about that as well. So again, I think that you have to be, your own hero in your own novel. So you kind of have to like find those opportunities to be a creative whenever you can and however you can.
Awesome. Now, many of your projects have an element of imperfection built in. You kind of mentioned that a little bit. Why do you think it is important in creating timeless, welcoming homes?
I think perfection is one of those things that's rarely memorable, in my opinion. A space can be meticulous and very polished, and at the end of the day, I sometimes I don't feel a connection to those spaces because I think that they lack a bit of soul. And I think every space really benefits from the touch of the unconventional, something that is essentially was not expected, that could be imperfect or even a little ugly. These moments of imperfection really create, I think, an incredible tension in a project. They create intrigue, they create depth, and they also allow, through juxtaposition with more beautiful, put together elements of a space, they provide that kind of tension and that juxtaposition that makes both of them, both the more beautiful, the more perfect thing, and the thing that is maybe a bit imperfect or a bit ugly, it makes them both much more interesting in their combination. And I think that that's, what I would love to communicate is ultimately embracing imperfection doesn't mean sacrificing beauty. It really is about acknowledging that beauty can be found in the artistic tension that comes out of introducing elements that are imperfect.
Now, your firm works globally, everywhere from Manhattan to, I believe, maybe Tel Aviv is what I read
Yeah.
online.
Yes.
So how do regional context and cultural differences kind of help your design process? I imagine a home in Manhattan may be quite a bit different
Yes, it
than a
would be.
home
And
in another hemisphere.
yeah, no, totally. And I think for me, I'm always amazed at designers who have ability to be so consistent, and all of their projects have, like, you can immediately tell that this project is located here. It's this designer, and it has this very consistent aesthetic. And I compliment that. For me, I feel philosophically a little bit different. I don't want any of my projects to look the same, and I take great inspiration for the locale that the projects are located in. So I'm really inspired by, the environment. I'm inspired by the landscape. I'm inspired by the light in those spaces, in those different locations, I should say. And I really want to create an interior that is a reflection of the country, culture, location, background that this project exists. At the end of the day, even for clients of ours that have multiple homes, I don't want any of their homes to feel the same, even though it's for the same client, because I want it to make it worth them traveling to that other home or traveling. I mean, that's the whole reason we travel. We travel to be inspired. We travel to explore and to take to learn something new in every space. So I really want to make sure that our projects feel connected to all of those things.
Now, I know you had mentioned at the beginning that prior to founding your firm, you had an experience to work in Tokyo, I believe. Talk to me maybe a little bit about when you had your own firm, that first kind of endeavor to create a space internationally. Just wondering, I feel like there would be some, I'd be a little bit scared, but with your background, it may not have been as scary, so to speak.
Well, first of all, I want to say I don't think scary is ever a bad thing. One of the things I do talk to a lot of young people about, young designers and other designers, is, ultimately, I call them growing pains. You know, when you're a young person, you're going through puberty, and your hips hurt, and your knees hurt, and your back hurts, and everything seems to ache and be painful. My mom used to remind me, she was like, "Well, this is just a sign that you're growing." And this is something that's really, a good thing. Like, you need to actually say, okay, well, this thing that I associate with being a negative is actually a positive. And so for me, being, putting myself into scary, quote unquote, scary experiences, I always say to myself, wow, I'm learning something. Like, I'm being challenged in a way that I haven't been challenged before. And so there has to be a bit of gratitude for the experience, and it helps me as part of my process in terms of psyching myself up for that experience. I have to say to myself, well, this is, you're about to do something you've never done before, and this is really cool, and you should actually be thankful for that. And it doesn't take long after you train your brain to think about those experiences that way, that nothing really scares you anymore. So to answer your question more specifically, I know my first international project was working in Mexico, and it was in also a part of Mexico that it's an incredible location, but security for our clients was a very big concern. And also working internationally for my very first project, and trying to imagine how I was going to, from just a business logistics perspective, get all of this product that we were sourcing in the United States down into this location in Mexico. We had to change, trucks on the border, and we had to have everything inspected, and we had to fill out, binders full of all of this information to be in compliance with the importing of goods into Mexico. That was like, I hadn't done any of that. And I remember when I was initially asked to do this project, I remember saying in my head, I have no idea how I'm going to do this. And that was, part of it scared me, but I was also really excited, to face the challenge. And I have an incredible team. I don't do all this by myself, far from it. And I remember I was like, I need robust logistical support for this, and I don't have it, and I can't do it. So I need to hire for that. So I think that was the other big lesson. And all of this was, you have to trust other people, either in your organization or out of your organization, to help fill in the gaps for the things that you may not be great at or may not have the time to do in the process of doing all this other, very legitimate work to make this project happen.
Well, I mean, it's awesome because you did, not only did you learn the logistics of that, but you did learn that lesson of trusting people and
I did.
learning to lean on individuals who were more experienced in that area or could help you kind of negotiate that together so that
Lindsay,
it wasn't just on
100%.
your shoulders.
100%. And that is the thing for me, is that I really hope that, I think there is this idea from a lot of people, smaller businesses, that they have to do everything on their own. And I think not only does that suck the fun out of the experience, because I believe the most fun part is the collaboration, but it also means you're much more limited in what you're able to do and what you're able to accomplish. So I think if you're wanting your business to scale and you're wanting to grow, you should not be afraid to trust and to bring in other people.
Now, you often mention that every interior benefits from a touch of black. Why is
Mm-hmm.
that an element that's so important to you, and how do you see it changing the atmosphere of a room? I noticed the
Well,
background. I believe that may be a black painted wall, but I'm not sure.
it's actually a moire, silk moire from Dadar, and it's
Okay.
actually, I'll have to, sometime you can see photos of it in my home.
Okay.
There's some great photos, but it's a kind of a dark charcoaly gray. But to answer your question, I think, and I'm not the first person, nor will I ever be the last, that says the exact same thing. Every room needs some black. What I do find is that, I think if you just look at the way your eyes physiologically work, they work on your perception of light, of course, and your perception of contrast. And, I think that what black does is obviously help to define a space. It helps keep it grounded. It helps it, come into focus. I think that ultimately interiors that are all very sepia toned are all very creamy and white. They don't have anything that really grounds the space. And so I always think that no matter what your aesthetic is, if you have a few elements in the space that are truly black, then your eye just really comes into focus.
Now, I'm not sure what's going on in Houston, but in Atlanta, I feel like every other person is painting their brick home white or beige or neutral, and like every home is all neutral walls, and it's just it's a lot of whites. Is it difficult sometimes to convince or collaborate well enough with a client to make them understand that that dark can really support the design and the aesthetic of a room, if that makes sense?
No, I mean, I actually don't even know. I don't, well, first of all, whenever I see a trend, I acknowledge it and I say, okay, well, I see what you're doing. I see where this is coming from, but ultimately for me, I try to understand what it is that they're trying to achieve. And so for when I'm talking to a client and they're showing me inspiration images, I just, I'm like a sponge. I absorb it all. And then of course, I don't actually have to explain to the client exactly how I got to the design solution, but I am going to, almost like an editor, I'm going to take all the things that they're giving me, all the stories, all of the images, and I'm going to put it together in a way that I think is most successful. And sometimes that is about, again, challenging them to maybe do some things that were not in their Pinterest board or not in their folder of magazine clippings. And I also try to, again, suspend some romance in the creative process to say, we're going to do some things that you're going to think are kind of ugly. I remember actually, I had the pleasure of listening to Jean-Louis Daigneault speak at an event, and he talked about having one thing in a room that was ugly, and he said, think about, your ugly pet. That pet, you could have a conventionally beautiful pet, but that pet that's ugly is actually just somehow much more lovable. And it holds your interest for longer. So, I try to get clients to say, we're going to do some things that you're going to like, they're going to maybe at first, they're going to bother you, but you're going to actually grow to love them because they become the thing about the room that makes it most interesting. And so, again, it's a little bit about romancing the experience and the process with the client and challenging them in ways that they didn't realize that they needed to be challenged. They don't do this every day. We do. So we have to be the ones who convince them of it.
That's awesome. Well, actually, I don't have any other questions, but I am curious, what has Ben like to do in his spare time, if that's a thing? I feel like you're
Let's
wearing so many hats. I don't know if in your spare time would happen. But what
well,
do you like to do for fun, or like, do you have any additional hobbies or anything like that? I'm just
that's a
curious.
great, I would love to think that I could be the type of person who could have more hobbies. But it is fun. I have these furniture collaborations, which I also, I get to design product. And so for me, it's a wonderful extension of my mission to, again, create beauty, spread positivity, and allow collaborators to do the same. So for me, doing sketching and furniture design is actually something I find really enjoyable to do. Um, so that's one thing I do. But I also, at the end of the day, I love to just travel. Travel is probably my biggest hobby. I like to learn things. I like to go to museums. I like to read books. I like to, be inspired. So I would say those are probably my main kind of main pursuits outside of just the architecture interior design practice that we run.
Do you have a favorite place that you've traveled, one, and a place that you really are looking forward to maybe traveling one day, whether it's in a year or 10 years?
That's a great question. I would say for me, probably my favorite place that I've traveled, just because it was so otherworldly to me, was and something I'd never experienced was I did a photo safari in South Africa, and just had the most amazing time seeing all these incredible creatures and their habitats, and wild and naturally roaming around. I think that was a really incredible experience for me, one that I will remember for forever. And then a place that I've never been. I have never been to Turkey. I've never been to, Istanbul, and I have this desire to really experience that part of the world and that culture. I think there's something very, you know, incredibly romantic and filled with history that I would love to just be a part of, at least once in my life. My favorite cities to visit in the world are Rome and London. I think that both cities are endlessly fascinating, and I love to go there. But I think for me, Istanbul would be next on my list of one of those ancient cities that still is a thriving metropolis today. I
Mhm.
love cities that have like even if they're really old, like Rome or London, they still have a heartbeat that's doesn't feel like a museum. There's actually life and culture and things happening in the present, not just in the past. So I'm always intrigued by that intersection of history and the now.
Yeah. Well, is there anything that you would hope to share with me, Ben, that I didn't ask you about?
No, I mean, I think we covered a lot of ground. I would say that um, I think that the collaborations that I've done with Chaddock Furniture have been really exciting for me, and I think they're very topical, because of the fact that um, you know, Chaddock Furniture, as an example, is one of the last true American furniture workrooms, creating furniture in North Carolina. So much of product now, whether it's an American company or not, is largely import.
Mhm.
So I was really excited to be able to work with craftsmen actually in North Carolina, creating product in North Carolina, for hopefully to support an entire ecosystem there, but also an ecosystem of furniture manufacturing here in the US. So I
Are,
I love it.
are they in the High Point area? I know that there's a large furniture market
Yeah,
there.
no, so they're actually their manufacturing happens about an hour away in a town called Morganton, North Carolina.
Okay.
And But they are one of the incredible companies that actually showcases furniture at the High Point Market. The High Point Market Authority obviously runs the show, but no, so Chaddock is one of the companies that exhibits their furniture there, and it's really wonderful. It's truly one of those custom furniture workrooms where you can take a design and you can modify it and change it. Many of the designs for Chaddock, because they do all of that work in house, and it's really a remarkable thing to see. And they're making furniture as we've made furniture for the last 150 years, so it's really cool.
That's really neat to be able to work with those artisans because
Yeah.
it's a trade that people don't realize. It's dying is probably a hard word to say, but it's so uncommon to hear about people who do that. So it's neat that you have an opportunity to work with them.
Well, and I hope that there's going to be more generations of that to come. So
Yeah.
fingers crossed.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you, Ben. I really appreciate you taking time to
Likewise,
chat with
Lindsay.
us. If anything pops up, we'll be in touch, but
Thank
I think
you.
we're good to go for today. So I hope
Well,
you have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday.
thank you, and thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It was a delight.